Hey there, how there, ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another sports catastrophe video talking about Sid Finch in April the 1st, 1985, and how we can be fantastic and all that. You really think I was going to talk about Sid Finch? Lots of people have better videos about Sid Finch. It's April Fool's Day, bitches. I shouldn't really said that, but whatever. Don't worry, I don't get money from this, so I can curse in the first 30 seconds. Nevertheless, today we are going to be looking at the top 10 MLB free agent signings of all time, wearing the Blue Jays jersey with the lovely hockey pucks. Blue Jay on the bottom. So, of course, it's a Batista jersey, but yeah, anyway, I'm going to talk about that. Well, anyhow, let's look at the top 10 best free agent signings of all time. And there were some good ones. I actually had to add a few. Well, change a few. Anyway, first off is number 10, and that's Max Scherzer for Washington 2015. Washington was a decent team. Like, they kept making the playoffs after leaving Montreal for Washington, but then they couldn't make it through. So they had to make some choice decisions. And they decided to pick up this pitcher, Max Scherzer, for 7 years, $210 million. Everyone remembers about Scherzer and his job with $30 million a year. But did people remember that Max Scherzer wasn't originally a Washington National? I bet you didn't know. Max Scherzer pitched for the Detroit Tigers. He had a couple of great playoff series against the Oakland A's in 2012 and 2013, and leading the Tigers to the 2012 World Series, losing to the Giants. But Scherzer went to Washington, paired up with the youngster Steven Strasburg, and they had a great pitching staff alongside Jordan Zimmermann. But anyhow, Scherzer was main plot for Washington winning the World Series in 2019. Number 9 is Kevin Brown from the Dodgers 1999. Kevin Brown's contract was big. Anyway, Kevin Brown toiled with the Texas Rangers, and then he ended up being a Florida Marlin in exchange for Rick Helling. So anyhow, Kevin Brown would help the Marlins win the 1997 World Series against Cleveland, which was a shame and all that, kind of controversial. Anyhow, Kevin Brown spent his time, but then unfortunately, Florida had to get rid of him to San Diego, kind of a fire sale, because they bought the World Series, if you will, but then dumped off their players and all that. Of course, they couldn't afford Mike Piazza and traded him to the Mets for people. So basically, yeah, it was like the year they bought the World Series. He only lasted 1 year in San Diego, even though he led the Padres to the World Series in 98. Well, to the finals. But then he left again for Los Angeles, who dangled a 7-year, $105 million carrot in front of him. So that would be about $15 million a year, and it was the first time that a pitcher got over $100 million in his contract. And it created the era of big deals for pitchers. Number 8 is Paul Molitor alongside Dave Stewart for the 93 Blue Jays. The Blue Jays made some great free agent signings and all that. In 92, they picked up Dave Winfield as a free agent, but they lost him to his hometown Minnesota Twins, and they had a rough time because they had to take 11 guys. They lost 11 players and all that. They lost, who did they lose? Who were the big ones they lost? They lost Kelly Gruber to the Angels. They lost Luis Soho, I think they lost, or the shortstop. I think they lost him. I think they lost Manny Lee to Texas. They lost Candy Maldonado, I think, to Milwaukee. Can't remember. They lost Dave Winfield, of course, to Minnesota. They lost Tom Hankey to Texas. Jimmy Key to the Yankees. David Cohn went to Kansas City. So yeah, they were in trouble. In 93, the Blue Jays decided to throw money at a couple of players. And one of them was Paul Molitor of the Milwaukee Brewers. He lasted 15 years with the Brewers organization, and he was a mainstay for them. But it was time to move on, and Molitor decided to sign the deal with the Blue Jays, pissing off Milwaukee fans everywhere. And of course, the Milwaukee owner was the baseball commissioner, Bud Selig. but he was just a temporary commissioner, allegedly. But yeah, Paul Mueller ended up being a J. But Selig said it was one of the worst feelings of he had it as the Brewers owner because obviously you couldn't do too much because of the connections. And then the Blue Jays needed a starting pitcher to help out. And they picked up Dave Stewart from the Oakland A's. Stewart was known as Mr. ALCS because he couldn't lose in the League Championship Series. Blue Jays brought him for that purpose, and it worked. Stewart was 2-0 in the ALCS. Paul Mueller had some key hits. He was named World Series MVP, mind you. So yeah, it all worked out for the Blue Jays. Number 7 is a signing the Blue Jays should have had but didn't, and that's Shohei Ohtani. Now Ohtani's at number 7. Well, we all know about him and signing with the Dodgers instead of the Blue Jays, and of course the fans were upset. He was a legend for the Angels and all that for many years, but unfortunately just couldn't get to the playoffs as a member of the Angels. He had 0 playoff appearances with the Angels. So apparently he was going to end up going to another team. And Toronto was right there. Allegedly his private jet was going to come to Toronto, but it was Kevin O'Leary from Dragon's Den. Unfortunately, though, Ohtani would sign with the Dodgers, kind of cross town from Anaheim to Los Angeles, for a massive deal, like over $500 million deferred of the $700 million deal, and Blue Jay fans were pissed off, especially dealing with Ohtani in 2025, coming back to stink up the joint and win the World Series for the Dodgers against the Blue Jays, of all things. Number 6 is Reggie Jackson with the New York Yankees in 1976. Reggie Jackson was this big prospect out of Arizona State, which the Mets could have had first overall, but they decided to go with a catcher, Steve Chilcott. Allegedly, Reggie had a Mexican girlfriend, and the Mets organization was not really too kind on it. Allegedly, of course. But the fact of the matter is that, Reggie married that girl, and he went to the Athletics organization, which was in Kansas City first, and then went to Oakland in 68. With the Oakland A's, he did quite well, although he missed the 72 World Series because he was injured in a home plate collision in the LCS with the Tigers. And then a couple years later, he ended up getting a couple of World Series rings. But in 1975, he left Oakland for Baltimore in a trade. So he was a Baltimore Oriole for 1 year. People forget about that. But yeah, he played for Baltimore for 1 year, didn't like it, went out on a free agency thing because free agency was just kind of starting. And lo and behold, the New York Yankees were willing to pay him through the nose, if you will. A 5-year, $2.96 million deal. A lot of people said, that's chump change. Well, this is 1976. You're not going to get $1 million a year. Are you crazy? But anyhow, he had clutch performances Mr. October, although he did get into escapades with Billy Martin. It still worked. They won the 1977 World Series, and Reggie won the 78 World Series without Billy, but he still did well. Number 5 is A-Rod's deal with Texas in 2001. I know you'd be thinking, well, that's just plain dumb. Well, you got to remember, the team's impact also factors in to what happens. So anyway, A-Rod was this great shortstop from the University of Miami who went to the Seattle Mariners first overall in the 93 draft. And A-Rod was great. He even played for the 95 team that saved baseball in Seattle, if you will. He ran his time out with Seattle by 2000, and then he decided to test free agency. Texas wanted him so bad they salivated with a 10-year, $252 million contract. That's $25 million a year. And that was huge back in 2001. 25 years later, $25 million a year is chump change to some. Well, fuck you then. Anyway, the 10-year deal, what it was supposed to bring Texas through and all that, try to make Texas seem strong. Unfortunately, though, A-Rod played on a few crappy Ranger teams and was even the strikeout victim of Seattle's 116th victory, which set a new MLB record. Well, a modern day record. But anyhow, A-Rod only spent 3 years, and then Texas wanted to get out of the deal badly, so they made it a trade. They tried to trade him to Boston, but they didn't have the money. They traded him to the New York Yankees and all that, and he spared no expense being with the Yankees and all that. Steinbrenner knew what he had to do. Number 4 is Vlad Guerrero to the Angels 2004. Of course, everyone knows about how good Vladdy Jr. is with the Toronto Blue Jays, winning ALCS MVP and almost getting the Blue Jays to the World Series. well, to the World Series title. They lost to those pesky Dodgers. But Vladdy Sr. was no slouch. He was a rags to riches story coming from the Dominican Republic. He was hitting quite well and all that. He played for Montreal. His first home run in 1996 as a major leaguer in Atlanta was actually on a pitch that was terribly out of the strike zone, but somehow Vladdy sliced it and hit it over the right field wall to win the game for the Expos. He was great for the Expos. He was the big body that the Expos needed after failing to make the playoffs after 1995. You know, the 94 season just ruined them and all that. And I know that Laurie Walker's deal should be in the top 10 because, after all, he signed a good free agent deal with Colorado, or even Andre the Hawk Dawson for winning the MVP the year after the Expos cut him loose. But anyhow, Vladdy was big. He was Montreal there. And then just before Montreal moved to Washington, he was sent to the Angels in free agency because Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim had a Latino owner and a Latino audience. So Vladdy was trying to do his job. He got a 6-year deal. He did quite well for the Angels. And of course, the Expos floundered and basically were sold to Washington. Number 3 is Man Ram, 2001 Bo Sox. Man Ram was a head case in a sense in Cleveland. He actually thought he hit his first major league home run in 1992, but it ended up being a double and almost got picked off second base. But nevertheless, Man Ram was good for Cleveland. He was their star left fielder. I mean, right left fielder and all that. So, you know, Man Ram was a fantastic player. And then in 2001, the Bo Sox needed a powerful outfielder, so they picked him up on an 8-year, $160 million deal. So $20 million a year for 8 years. Like, that was amazing that Boston had that much money and all that. Well, it worked. I mean, accompanying David Ortiz, who actually was traded from the Twins to the Red Sox, back in Minnesota, regrets that trade. Man Ram did its job, and he helped the Bo Sox win the World Series in 2004, even part of the 2017, and of course Manny being Manny before heading to Los Angeles. Number 2 is Greg Maddux, 1992, with the Braves. Greg Maddux was a great pitcher. People forget that he started his life as a Chicago Cub, not an Atlanta Brave, as most people might think. Greg Maddux was serviceable for the Cubs and all that back in those days, like the Cubs days and till the mid 90s. He wore glasses and then he had laser eye surgery. What a prick. I mean, pitching with glasses, that's great for someone who wears glasses like yours truly. Nevertheless, Greg Maddux was great for the Cubs and all that, and then won the 92 Cy Young as a member of the Cubs. And then Atlanta just had to have him, so they decided to pick him up. It was a massive move, and Atlanta had that pitching rotation of Maddux, Glavine, Avery, Smoltz, and the lesser-known fifth guy, Pete Smith. But the fact of the matter is that Maddux was great. 94, he pitched a no-hitter. He won the Cy Young. He had a great ERA and all that. The Braves were lucky to have him. And then he won 3 Cy Youngs with the Braves and 1 with the Cubs consecutively, helping them to get to the 95 World Series. I don't think, no, he wasn't the hero. It was Tom Glavine who was the hero for the Atlanta Braves in 95 World Series. But yeah, Maddux did his job. So, yeah, it worked. And finally, numero on, and a player I hate the most is Barry Bonds. But this was big with the San Francisco Giants. It wasn't for the most years and the most money per year or even the most for the contract. It was the simple fact that Barry Bonds' signing with San Francisco actually helped the team out. Yes, he went on that he had that 6-year deal worth $43 million, not per year, but overall. And yes, he did hit the single season and career home run records as a member of the Giants and was big in the 2000s. But I think more than anything that it helped San Francisco as a franchise. Here's why. The Giants were in financial ruin, not for the first time. The first time practically was 1976 when they almost went to Toronto, but San Fran Mayor George Moscone, who, yes, the guy who was shot alongside Harvey Milk a couple years later, put a block on the sale so that a San Francisco owner, a guy like Bob Lowry, could buy the team. It worked out because Toronto got an American League franchise, which Washington almost had in 77. But the fact of the matter is that the Giants were bleeding money. Lowry wanted out. So he sold the team. And it was rumored that San Francisco was going to head to Florida in St. Petersburg because, Tampa Bay was setting up this big dome stadium and they were having hockey games in it before baseball. Bet you didn't know that. But yeah, the Giants were convinced. And with a new owner, they were allowed to break the bank. So they broke the bank on Barry Bonds, the former Pirate who could not throw out Sid Bream in the 92 NLCS Game 7. But nevertheless, Bonds proved worthy. And the Giants went on a massive tear to start the 93 season. And it looked like they were going to win the NL West, get some playoff money, and, be safe, as Hal says. Well, Bonds' signing with the Giants was the safest House's thing. But you forget that the Atlanta Braves came from absolutely nowhere to win everyone's hearts. So practically, that was one of the best moments of all time and all that. So yeah, Barry Bonds saved the Giants from moving from San Francisco, and we all are happy for it, I guess. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond at Do.